Located 3 miles south of Frederick City, Monocacy National Battlefield preserves more than 1,600 acres of land on the north and south shores of the Monocacy River. On July 9, 1864, a crucial battle in the American Civil War took place on this ground, where forces of the United States Army successfully delayed Confederate forces attempting to attack the nation's capital at Washington, D.C. The Battle of Monocacy quickly became known as the battle that saved Washington, but far more than just a battle took place on this hallowed ground. Come along as we learn more about the black history of Monocacy National Battlefield. The land preserved by the National Park Service at Monocacy National Battlefield includes the site of an enslaved labor farm from the early years of the United States. Through intense historical research and archaeology, rangers are sharing stories of those enslaved on properties now included in the national park.
The Hermitage was the property that we're on today, that we refer to as the Best Farm, and originally it was owned by a woman named Victoire de la Vincendière. Her family had escaped both from the French Revolution and the slave rebellions in Saint-Domingue and purchased this property. They seem to be sort of recreating this sort of plantation that they would have known in Saint-Domingue, where they were from, which was a coffee plantation with a large amount of enslaved people on their property. She was the second largest slave owner in Frederick County at the time. We certainly recognize that the Civil War, you know, the root cause of the Civil War is slavery. The economics, the politics, the injustice, all of that kind of rolls into it. And this is a location where you have this dichotomy of French immigrants who are coming in seeking freedom, yet they are holding enslaved people on their property as well.
In September 1862, Abraham Lincoln issued his Emancipation Proclamation, announcing that all enslaved people in rebellious states would be free as of January 1, 1863. Recruitment of African American regiments began following the proclamation's adoption.
The United States Colored Troops were an organization developed during the American Civil War for African American men to fight for the Union cause. The organization is actually made up of a variety of folks from within the African American community. We have free people of color, we have the contrabands, or folks that are literally fleeing from the South, and of course the recently emancipated or self-emancipated folks who have freed themselves in the years leading up to the Civil War and immediately there, or I should say during. There was a recruiting center here at Monocacy Junction. Now, Frederick County is going to have approximately 500 African American men enlist in the Union War effort and be shipped out from Monocacy Junction. While there was very unlikely an actual desk with someone behind it to sign all these guys in and get their paperwork squared away at the junction, what had happened is recruiters have actually gone out through Frederick County to the various churches, to people's homes, and enlisted those men where they're from. They would then come to Monocacy Junction, or Frederick Junction as it was also known, and they from there would ship out to places like Baltimore and elsewhere, many of these men joining even some of the most famous regiments of the United States Colored Troops.
When thinking of battlefield landscapes, the conflict itself is often what comes to mind. Monocacy National Battlefield's Tenant House covers far more than combat and fighting.
The Tenant House Museum is going to be open this spring. It's a seasonal part of the battlefield, and it has a variety of stories in there related to the civilians that were on this landscape long before July 9, 1864 and the Battle of Monocacy, and long after.
In the 20th century, African American migrant workers came to Frederick County from areas of the South. Researchers at Monocacy National Battlefield have begun to explore their place in the region's long history.
So we do understand that the migrant workers that were here were whole families. They would work here from the springtime towards early fall until October. They would work on the land, they would harvest, and afterwards they would also work in downtown Frederick at the canneries. So we know that the migrant workers, it was whole families that were here. We have a swing set that we've identified recently due to recent research. We also know of graffiti that we're very It's likely it was produced by the migrant workers, and we also know within the landscape itself, we have what we are considering archaeological sites with the remains of products along hedgerows.
For me, the most important legacy of African American history here at Monocacy National Battlefield is really the spirit of resistance that we see in the enslaved populations that were here. Each one of our farms here at Monocacy had enslaved labor, and yet we have documentation of self-emancipation or escaping, actually resisting slavery. And of course, furthering that, we have the United States colored troops themselves, recruiting near and around this region, shipping out from Monocacy Junction and going to fight for the freedom of their people in the American Civil War.